need to talk about something interesting.
This is part D of a video series in which part A through C do not exist. Yet, or maybe ever. I don't know. This is the fourth because we're skipping to the end. We're throwing you in the advanced classes, Magical Girls 402 second semester. I will assume you understand and have drunk deeply upon and truly grokked the 3 previous videos that exist only as wisps floating ethereally along in my mind. I trust that you've turned these over and over and have come to some sort of viewpoint in which we can ground this discussion in. I know I myself have. And as you will know, as someone who has sat through these video tirades on the topic, or would have if they existed, that we're going to be expounding further about family in magical girl shows. Now, purely for the benefit of myself alone, we're going to recap what was in those previous 3 videos. Part A was dealing with the normal magical girl, or the normative magical girl family. That is your typical Precure heroine, your Usagi's and Nanoha's and Sakura's dad and brother being integral parts of her life, and then directly chasing that through line through to the climaxes and themes of the core magical girl experience. Then in part B, of course, we went on to talk about when that normative structure is inverted, whether through negative interactions or an on-screen absence of familial support, invoking Pressure Testarossa, Ragyo Kiryuin, the Black Moon Clan, or Hibiki's father, and moving on to the emptiness in the lives of the inner soldiers, or Homura and Sayaka, and naturally how that leaves a emotional and thematic void within the character, how they're forced by that to grow up very quickly and abandon childish foolery, and how that can be reconciled or created by interactions with the normative magical girl heroine. Finally, then, in part C, we went into extreme depth about subversions, creation of alternative familial structures, of magical girl marriage, and how the role of family is more than bloodline and house. Referencing, of course, Symphogear's Miku, Nanoha Vivid, Utena and Anthe, Haruka and Michiru, Chibiusa, Nanoha A's, and the Mankoshikus. Then, of course, bringing up everyone's favorite magical girl show, Evangelion. So I'm happy then that we've arrived at this point where we can finally talk about what I find to be probably the most interesting or the most intricate of the familial relationships in a magical girl show. And that would be Reclamation, a minor spin-off of Type C, but with a more thematic focus. And for this subset, I'd like to indulge you with 2 separate references of which I've encountered over the last week, and I feel brought me to thinking about this part D even before I've expounded upon the other parts. Our tale today in 2 acts. The first, the finale of Space Patrol Luluco, and the second, Magical Do-Re-Mi, episode 49. Space Patrol Luluco was just released on YouTube in its entirety. I have seen the show and watched the show many times, have the Blu-ray. I count Hiroyuki Imaishi as one of my favorite directors, and Luluco as one of my favorite magical girls. And while many will see this short show as a collection of inside trigger references and Imaishi being Imaishi, fast and frantic and with little purpose other than his ostensible desire to keep the foot on the gas pedal the entire way through, there is a very strong thematic core here that peaks in one scene that I'd like to make reference to. After, of course, talking with Inferno Cop in Hell and resurrecting herself from being dead, and then finding her purpose and what she needs to do, Luluco has, up until this point, been driven solely by her desire to have what she defines as a normal life, and is completely taken aback by the supernatural occurrences and oddities that tend to occur around her, even though she does her best to avoid it. In her nadir, climbing out of that, she now has a new resolution. And it's this point where she seeks help from and reconciles with her mother. That is, reconciles with the ostensible antagonist of the show. The scene plays out wonderfully quick. It's over before it almost begins. In it, Luluco expresses her desire to confess to Nova, and all that happens is Laluco acknowledges that as worthy, and goes from deliberately trying to ruin her normal everyday life in her hometown with her father, to fully supporting Luluco, giving her her ship, and sending her off. If at first this seems a bit abstracted to the general family dynamics of magical girls, that's right, yes, it very much is. However, let's look at Luluco's family life as it were. That normal life was trying to lead a normal high schooler existence with her father. She is denied this by the machinations of the plot, namely her father's job and her mother's job, well, such as it is. So if we contextualize it in this way, the only thing stopping Luluko from having her normal life is her family. So herein we've seen the inversion, that the support from the family does not set Luluko up to have these ideals and these values. She has these constructed ideals and values of what normal is. However, that's not her reality. When she demonstrates to Laluko in this scene that her values have now shifted from that normal everyday life to something a bit more high-minded for herself, not wanting to fit in, but to make her own path, then Luluko actually reclaims her family. It's not as she wanted in the beginning, but that hardly matters now. The values demonstrated are a belief in the power of love, which is essentially core to the magical girl genre, of course. And by demonstrating that, this belief in love, this value of this first love and whatever that sappy connotations that go along with that, and that has meaning, Luluko has convinced Laluko. Luluko has put her mother and her father back on the same page and reestablished a family dynamic that she is then happy with and contented with. She has used the values of the magical girl genre to construct or reconstruct her family. And now you can see how this is closely related to the other family constructs that appear throughout magical girl shows in the type C that we talked about when we didn't talk about it earlier. But I think what's really interesting about this and our next example is that they are not trying to subvert the traditional family structure, but reestablish it in a different context. By becoming a true magical girl, this time from dying and having her epiphany with Inferno Cop, Luluko has manifested her family back into being. It's passing odd that I would encounter the very same thing as we finished up the first season of Magical Do-Re-Mi, which is something that many viewers may be less familiar with, although if you are a Magical Girl fan, I would say that's quite the tragedy. It's a wonderful show, and in many ways, so many ways, the missing link between Sailor Moon and Pretty Cure. But we're not talking about the series as a whole, we are only talking about one episode, and indeed only one character, and that's Onpu. Onpu is a confusing character. Initially introduced as a rival, her attitude actually appears more apathetic or mischievous. She often casts taboo magic like manipulating people's minds, and that's much to the consternation of the other characters in the show. And the final stretch of Magical Do-Re-Mi's first season is mostly dedicated to exploring Onpu. She's not a foil, she's not a rival so much as she is another example of a character with power, but without purpose. That is, while she is a witch, while she has a transformation sequence, she is not yet a magical girl. However, episode 49 is the first episode where she becomes one. The conceit of the episode is that Onpu, an idol and actress, has an audition, but more importantly, immediately after the audition, she has a meeting with her father, a train conductor who is rarely ever in Onpu's life. Onpu's mother, too, doesn't provide much in the way of familial support. She is entirely positioned until this point as Onpu's manager, providing no emotional support, and even going so far as to leave her child alone on Christmas. And Onpu, while often detached or playing her idol persona, is here with the prospect of meeting her father again, looming over her, cast in an entirely different light, displaying personality traits that she hasn't before. She's acting as a child, she's running around gleefully, she's completely foreign to what we the viewers and the characters in the show have seen. Of course, the plot is not so easily resolved, and Onpu's audition, of course, goes longer than she expected. The climax of the episode is reached when the girl Onpu is auditioning against goes on stage and suffers an immense bout of stage fright. Onpu would have nothing to do to win, get the role, and go see her father in time. However, thanks to a combination of masterful series planning by Junichi Sato and masterful episodic direction by Shigeyasu Yamauchi, who you may remember from Jet's episode in Cowboy Bebop or that really great Penguin Drum elevator scene. This episodic climax comes as a transition point for Onpu's character and the values she has assumed from the other magical girls. Onpu, in this moment, in this uncharacteristic up until now, display, once again casts her taboo magic. She removes her rival's stage fright, losing the role and losing her opportunity to teleport to her father's train in time to make it. This is truly Ompu's first honestly selfless act. The first time she demonstrates empathy, compassion, understanding. Though Ompu appears defeated and rejected by the help of the other Ojimajos, she is able to actually arrive on the train with her father and have her meeting with him. Even going so far as for him to be a character that appears later in the season. I'm sure the correlation is evident here that this is a carrot dangled upon a string put in front of Ompu as reward for her truly embracing and understanding the magical girl genre. She's rewarded here, but she's rewarded in the one thing that possibly could have avoided all of this. Had she known these values from the start, had she had a loving and caring family, perhaps it would never have arrived at this. But it has. And whether here nor there, she learned those values all the same. And now that she knows them, she can live that true family life. Because in the magical girl genre, there's not so much a causality. There's not so much a one-to-one. Instead, there's a prevailing power, a belief in hope, an earnesty in miracles and magic and the Care Bear bullshit. It's not how you come to understand these values, whether they're imparted on you from an idyllic nuclear family life, whether you come to learn them from allies or enemies. It's only instead that these values are preeminent. They are axioms. They are everything and the only thing that matters. And if you truly accept them and believe them and drink deeply of them, nothing is too far gone, even reconstructing a broken family. Hey guys, thanks for sticking with me through that one. It was a passion project that kind of hit me out of nowhere. Still have Madoka episode 2 coming, and now that we've hired an editor, yay, things may actually progress on this channel. Stay tuned.